Okay.
All right. Welcome everyone to our Maltese Cross keynote for the 2021 Virtual Nursing Research Conference. I welcome all of you. I'm excited for you to participate in the keynote, and we are very, very blessed to have Donna Cardillo, who is an RN, and she is known as the Inspiration Nurse. She travels the world helping nurses to be happy in their careers and to reach their full potential. She is fiercely passionate about nursing and life in general. Donna is the original Dear Donna columnist at nurse.com. She is a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing and a certified speaking professional, only one of 25 nurses in the world with this designation. Donna is the author of 4 books, including the award-winning Falling Together: How to Find Balance, Joy, and Meaningful Change When Your Life Seems to Be Falling Apart. She has received numerous business and healthcare awards and recognitions, but is most proud of being named a diva in nursing by the Institute for Nursing in New Jersey for outstanding achievements and excellence in practice. Donna has been referred to as the Nurse Whisperer. She is a lifelong Jersey girl with attitude to spare. Please welcome Donna
Excellent. Thanks
Cardillo.
for hanging in there with us, everybody. Nurse power, nurse power. We solved it all together. So Florence Nightingale said that nursing should not be a sacrifice, but one of the highest delights of life. And I'm not so sure too many nurses are feeling delighted these days. Who could have ever imagined that we would be pushed to our physical, emotional, and spiritual limits in the way that we have been in the last year and a half, going on 2 years? But what many of us do and have done in the past when times are really challenging and we need some support, some strategy, some advice, we ask ourselves, what would Florence do? Or WWFD. And if we had a chance to talk to Florence today, and I do believe she's always with us. In fact, I don't know, can you see me at all right now, by the way? Any thumbnails?
Yes, I could see you.
Okay, excellent. I can't see my image on the screen, so that's fine. I have I have Florence Nightingale here with me all the time on my desk. Just want you to know that. I think that Florence Nightingale would tell us to go back to basics in many ways, and that she would tell us to reach down deep into our own internal resources. And I think that she would tell us to do research. And since this is a research conference, I want to say a few words about research. And Florence Nightingale herself, of course, was very much into research. She understood the value of it. And research is one of the most interesting, exciting, creative, and innovative parts of nursing practice. It is a point where nursing science, nursing practice, nursing knowledge come together. It's kind of the junction there. And yet nursing research is one of the best kept secrets. Those of you that are involved in nursing research, you know what's going on, but so many nurses even don't know what's going on, never mind the rest of the healthcare population, or certainly not the public in many different cases. So it's important not only to continue to do the research work that you're doing, but to tell all other nurses about it. Certainly, I know you work to get as many of your team at Carilion involved in research, but so many people, so many nurses are intimidated by research. They don't really quite understand what it is. Many nurses think it's only for doctorally prepared nurses, but research should actually be part of every nurse's practice. From day one, actually, having some understanding, developing some interest, some involvement in research, even at a very fundamental level. 26 years ago, when I began my education business, I started doing a seminar called Career Alternatives for Nurses. And I was teaching nurses about all the opportunities within nursing that was available to them. And I was talking about research 26 years ago, because again, a lot of nurses don't really realize the opportunities that are there. And, you know, in terms of getting even new nurses involved in research, one of the things, everybody is having enormous issues with recruitment and retention right now. It's across the country. We have what's predicted to be the biggest shortage of nurses in our history, just everything that's been going on with the pandemic and burnout and the aging workforce. We do have a lot of challenges in front of us right now. But what I have learned in working with students and new nurses, which I do a lot of, is they very much need and want to get engaged in not just developing their critical thinking skills and everything else that they need to do to provide great, competent, confident patient care, which they absolutely do, but they're really interested and excited about getting into all the other professional aspects of nursing: research, shared governance, committee work, leadership, professional writing, speaking, whatever that might be. And that is maybe different from what many healthcare organizations have done in the past, but it's something that we all have to focus on today. I work with a lot of nursing leadership groups across the country, and I spoke with one nursing leadership group a while ago, pre-pandemic, and they told me that they do not permit any of their newly licensed nurses to get involved in any other activities within the organization for 1 year. And that is because they felt those new nurses needed to focus on their critical thinking skills, their clinical skills, and so on. They asked my opinion as to if I thought that was a good idea or the right thing to do. So my thought was, I didn't make that face, I didn't say that, but my thought was, and as I did say to the group that day, if we wait a whole year to get new nurses involved in all of these other professional aspects of nursing, they very possibly, A, might leave within that year, and B, we really have to get them engaged to the highest level possible from day one. And again, this seems to be what a lot of newer nurses coming into nursing are interested in. Another nursing group, nurse leadership group I worked with, told me that they require every newly licensed nurse to get involved, either to be on a committee, be on a research team, whatever it might be. And that's an ideal situation for our new nurses today, really for all of our nurses. But I just wanted to start out talking about research particularly a little bit, and how important it is to get all nurses engaged in research. You know, I was honored to be inducted into the American Academy of Nursing a few years ago. I'm a fellow in the Academy today, and I get my publication, Nursing Outlook, and it is entirely, the publication is entirely research that has been done by nurses. Of course, this publication is by members of the Academy, but I'm getting constantly exposed to innovative research being done by nurses. And I belong to Sigma Theta Tau as well. And the research that's going on with nurses is just incredible. And it is minimally something every nurse should know about, be exposed to, be told about, and then, as I said, be engaged in whatever level that is possible. And the other thing about nursing research, it's one of the best kept secrets on the planet. Sometimes other nurses, and as I said, healthcare professionals don't even know what we're doing, but we don't always get the word out about the great research. So enough about that. Let's just talk about some things to do going forward on your research day here. And I'm going to just give you some tips and strategies. And by the way, at the end of this hour, we'll go a little bit over. I'm sure that's okay because we got a little bit of a late start. I'm going to ask you to share at the end what your biggest takeaway was, or an aha moment, or something you're going to change or do differently, or something that you heard that inspired you. And I'm going to ask some of you to share that at the end. You can share it in the chat box, and Beth or Kim, I'll need some help in reviewing those and reading those. Or I don't know if you're going to be permitted to unmute yourself and actually contribute, but it's good to share, especially because we're in a virtual environment. We have minimal actual interaction in this environment. It's great that we have it, but it would be good if we can do a little bit of sharing at the end. And I always say that sharing is caring, because if you got something out of it, or you had an idea, or you had an insight, share it with others. It gives them ideas, it gives them inspiration as well. All right. So let's just start by a little rah-rah nursing. And again, we want to get back to basics. We want to look at the foundation and what we have going for us right now in nursing, because we get, even before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic, we get so caught up in the work that needs to be done that we sometimes just lose sight of so many other important things. So many nurses have told me in the last year and a half that they're only surviving, they're not even working. That's the level of output that they have found themselves required to give. So they're surviving, they're they're not even working. They're just trying to get through every day, every hour, every minute. So that's why I want to get back to basics. I think Florence Nightingale would tell us that, and I think that's a good place for us to start, because I think when everything is chaotic and topsy-turvy and so much change is happening and we're faced with so many challenges, we want to just get back to our foundation and to basics in nursing. I think it's good to get back to basics anyway. You know, I often have said that one of these days I'm going to write a book about that everything I ever needed to know about nursing, I learned in Fundamentals of Nursing. Now, I've been saying that for years and I haven't written that book yet. But so if you want to do that, feel free to do that. But we really learned core values, core strategies in Fundamentals of Nursing in nursing school. You know, developing a therapeutic relationship, honoring the patient first. So many other things. Introducing ourselves to patients by name and credentials so they know who we are and what we do. But let's just look at a little bit of what we have going for us right now. Currently, there are over 4 million registered nurses in this country and several 100,000 more LPNs and LVNs. There are more nurses in the US than there have ever been in the past. And we are the largest of all healthcare providers. There is power in numbers. There are more nurses than there are physicians, pharmacists, therapists, whatever. So imagine if we decided to gang up on the others. Not that we would. Maybe here in New Jersey we would, but I'm sure not down where you are. But there is power in numbers. We're the largest of all healthcare providers. The Gallup poll for over 20 years now, every year asks people which occupation, which profession they find most trustworthy, most credible. And consistently, year after year after year, except for 2001, nurses were in the #1 spot. That is huge. That is powerful. The public trusts nurses more than any other profession. Now, that's great, and that's a power fact, but we don't want to get complacent about that, because it doesn't necessarily mean that people understand what nurses do, the value that we bring to healthcare, and what we have to offer. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. And, you know, I mentioned, except for 2001, that was the year of the 9/11 tragedy, nurses were bumped into the #2 place. Firefighters were ranked #1 that year for good reason. The spotlight was on them, and many of them lost their life and all of the amazing work they were doing. But the next year, nurses went right into that #1 slot again. Important to remember these things. The Department of Labor for years now has ranked nursing in the top 5, the top 10, sometimes #1 for the best job for growth, career growth, and opportunity going forward. Why is that important? Because when the Department of Labor talks about nursing, especially ranks it high above all other occupations and professions, it gets the attention of the media, it gets the attention of politicians, it gets the attention of healthcare administrators and leaders, and it gets the attention of prospective people who might consider getting into nursing as a profession. And by the way, in case you're not aware, the nursing shortage is not for lack of people who want to get into nursing. We have 2- and 3-year waiting lists for individuals to get into nursing entry-level programs right now. That's a whole nother conversation, but sometimes people hear nursing shortage, they assume nobody wants to get into nursing. People who are not nurses or not in nursing assume that the pandemic would drive a lot of prospective candidates away from the nursing profession. Quite the opposite has happened, actually, because of the spotlight on nursing and more people understanding the vital, valuable, life-saving, life-affirming, all of the work that we do. More and more people want to get into the profession. The same thing happened after the 9/11 tragedy. A ton of people evaluated their life. They said, we want to do more meaningful work. We want to get into nursing. So it's important to have those facts straight when people bring up the nursing shortage or say, wow, I bet nobody wants to be a nurse anymore. Quite the opposite is true. In fact, we have more people than ever that want to get into the profession right now. Important to understand that. We have a lot of personal and professional power, but we don't always know it. We don't always recognize it. We don't always know how to utilize it. I have been working on a 3rd revision of one of my books called Your First Year as a Nurse, Making the Transition from Total Novice to Successful Professional. I like to say it's all the things they don't have time to teach us in nursing school that we need to be successful. There's a lot of that. And I had to add 3 new chapters to the book. I had to update all the old material, the current material, and I had to add 3 new chapters to the book for a 3rd revision. So the 3 chapters that I added, the first one is on empowerment, which is about personal and professional power, what it is, learning the tools to use it, and then how to use it. And then the other 2 chapters I added were mindfulness and resilience. But I wanted to mention the point of empowerment because that is important. We have so much knowledge. There is so much work we do and we can do, but many of us have not yet developed our voice. Many of us have not yet developed the communication skills or the assertiveness skills that we need to have a seat at the table, to get a seat at the table, to be involved in all decision making, to get more of our research out there, to increase an understanding of the role that nurses play in healthcare. There's still such a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are and what we do and the role that we play. And, you know, the pandemic put a spotlight on us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it really cleared things up for people. So just important for us not to get complacent about that and to continue to move forward with it. So the first point I want to talk about is practicing extreme self-care. And by extreme self-care, I'm talking about making self-nurturing a priority in your life and truly understanding the value of it. Self-care is not anything new. We've heard about it, we talk about it, we pay it lip service. And most of us are like, yeah, I know I should do it. I really don't have any time. And I had even less time during the pandemic, Donna. So here's the thing. I have a whole different perspective I want to give you on self-nurturing and nourishing. And this is such an important topic. Self-care is not a luxury. It's not a reward. It's not pampering. It could be those things, but it is routine maintenance for the body, the mind, and the spirit. It is akin to eating and sleeping. It's that important. We are humans. We are not machines. Our energy is not limitless. We normally are expending a lot of physical, emotional, and spiritual energy in the work that we do and in our personal lives as well. We all have very full lives. And if we do not commit to replenishing that energy, we are not working at our highest level. We're not giving our best. We're just not at the top of our game. And not only that, if we're not taking time to replenish our energy, it's already having a negative effect on us, and that is going to be cumulative. And eventually it's going to come out as burnout, as illness, or something even worse than that. Now, this is in regular times. We are just hopefully getting through, but still in the midst of a pandemic. The energy output that we have been in, plus wretched staffing and so many other things that are happening across the country right now, all the challenges I mentioned up front, we have put out more physical, emotional, and spiritual energy than usual. And it doesn't mean that once the pandemic quiets down, we can just come back to that midpoint again. We actually have to be very passionate about replenishing that energy and recovering. Recovering is a big word right now. I'm not just talking about everyday self-care. I'm talking about recovery from what we've been through and what we are going through still right now before we can even get back to some sort of a midline to move forward. And that means practicing extreme self-care. I did not pay heed to self-care until I almost totally burnt myself out a number of years ago, one time in particular in my life. And burnout is simply when we expend all our energy and we don't take any time to put any of it back. Plus, we don't even know what the fallout or the aftermath of the pandemic on nurses is going to be afterwards, because we're already seeing high levels of anxiety, of depression, post-traumatic stress, compassion fatigue, you name it. I could spew a whole bunch of mental health phrases, but there is just so much going on and is going to continue to go on. So how can you practice extreme self-care in your life? And when I talk about these things, this is absolutely for you. But as nursing leaders, we have to practice what we preach. You cannot lead anyone further than you have gone yourself. And when we practice these things, we are also role models. We are mentors. I once read something to the effect of, you teach by the way you live. We can stand in front of a group and we can talk to them and we can give them handouts, but we teach by the way we live, by the way we practice, by the way we conduct ourselves and carry ourselves and take care of ourselves. So you cannot lead anyone further than you've already gone yourself. So here are some quick tips for you. Cultivating positive rituals in your day and your life. And rituals are things that we do repeatedly. We do them every day. We do them over and over again. And some positive rituals could be things as simple as some deep breathing every morning, sitting in a quiet place, eyes closed, some deep breathing. It could be doing some stretching, could be doing a little yoga, could be writing in your journal, or it could be doing some spiritual reading something uplifting. One of my favorite books for daily reading, first of all, there are some books called day books, which just means that there's an entry every day, 365 days, something for that day, but you can read any day in that book. But there's lots of other books you can just open up, books of poetry or inspiration. One of my favorite books for daily inspirational reading is called The Book of Awakenings by Mark Nepo, N-E-P-O, The Book of Awakenings by Mark Nepo. And it is a day book, which means he has a short, very short essay, sometimes one paragraph, sometimes 3 or 4. Starts with a quote, little essay, some elements of self-reflection, and then he has some self-reflective exercises at the end. So you could probably spend 5 minutes or less reading something from that book every day, or another book of your choice, and that could be part of your daily ritual. You're reading something positive, something uplifting, and it's just giving you some foundation to stay steady and to stay on course. I mentioned to you that one of the chapters I added to my book revision is a chapter on resilience. And the word resilience is very misunderstood by nurses and in healthcare, but let's just talk about nurses right now. Many nurses actually get angry at the mention of the word resilience because it's not understood. Nurses are being told to be resilient, and many of them think that resilience means toughing it out, just taking on more and more, stiff upper lip and all that. And that's not what resilience is at all. Resilience is developing a toolbox of tools that you can use to help you get through the really tough times, but then to help you recover and come back even stronger and wiser afterwards. And, some of these things that I'm talking about are all elements of resilience. There's certainly many more as well. But resilience is another important trait, attribute to develop, and it definitely is something that we can build up. Set an intention every day. An intention is how you want your day to go. And there's an expression that says, as your intention goes, your energy flows. So you could set an intention every day to be more compassionate. You could set an intention to be joyful. You could set an intention to focus on gratitude. There are any number of things that you could set your intention on for that day. My intention every day, I set an intention every morning. My intention just about every day is joy and gratitude. It doesn't mean that I feel joyful or I'm feeling grateful for everything in my life, but that's what I want to focus on for the day. That's what I choose to focus on, joy and gratitude. And subconsciously, that will turn out what we wind up focusing on. Remember, as your intention goes, so your energy flows. So set an intention for the day. You don't have to believe this works. You don't have to understand how or why. You just have to try it. And sometimes you have to trust the process. We tell that to our patients sometimes too. We give them advice on breathing into a plastic machine with a ball going up and down, and it maybe seems kind of crazy, seems like a child's toy or whatever. And we say, you have to trust the process. I know what I'm talking about. Give it a try. It's going to be helpful to you. All right. Practicing gratitude. Gratitude is just looking at the world from a different perspective. Rather than looking at what you perceive you've lost or you're lacking, look at all the gifts that are in front of you. And most of us are grateful for the obvious things, our home, our family, our health, whatever degree of health we have. But there's so many other things to be grateful for every day. How about, just being able to turn on a faucet and have clean, drinkable water? Apparently, the lack of drinkable water is one of the most significant challenges and lacks globally for so many people. And it's something we take so for granted. How about having a car in your driveway and a car that starts up most days? There's so many different things to be grateful for. When I get into bed at night, I say to myself, I am thankful, I am grateful to have a warm, dry, safe, comfortable bed to sleep in every night, because everybody does not. And I don't take that for granted. I lay there in my warm, dry, safe, comfortable bed, and I am grateful for that. When I wake up in the morning, I say to myself, or sometimes even out loud, I am grateful for this day, what it brings and what has brought me here. So I'm grateful for the day ahead, and I'm grateful for everything that has brought me up to this point. When I throw my legs over the side of the bed and I can stand up and walk, I'm grateful that my body holds me up and I have the ability to move. My husband has MS. He can't walk anymore. He can't even stand. That's all over for him. And sometimes he'd give anything to be able to even just stand, never mind take a few steps. But sometimes we have to witness what others have lost to truly appreciate what we have. I'm even grateful every day that I can easily inhale and exhale, because as we very well know, everybody doesn't have that ability. So shifting your focus to gratitude, instead of what you perceive you're missing, focus on all the gifts that are in front of you, changes everything. Learning to disengage. Disengagement is the act of pulling away mentally and or physically for a few moments, for longer periods of time from your work or any responsibilities or stresses that you have in your personal life. And you can disengage in the course of your workday for a few minutes by stepping outside, feeling the sun on your face, breathing some fresh air, listening to the birds tweet. If you can't get outside, research shows that even looking out a window at nature can be helpful, and your mind just shifts. Sitting in a chapel or a meditation room or a Zen room or a Watson room, if you have one in your facility, for just a few minutes of quiet relaxation. If you take a break, even for a few minutes, I should say when you take your break, that's a whole nother conversation. Do some knitting or a puzzle or read something, even if just for a few minutes. In other words, you're getting away from your work for a few minutes. You're giving your mind a break, and you are disengaging. The reason I'm talking about this so much, and there's a book in your recommended reading called The Power of Full Engagement. Excellent book. I highly recommend it. The authors did research, and they find that we are all working, pushing ourselves harder. We're working longer hours. We're putting in more time because we're never caught up. So we think if we work more, we'll get caught up. And they say, first of all, I'm paraphrasing, they say, face it, your inbox is never going to be empty, figuratively speaking. And when we push ourselves and keep working harder and longer without periodic disengagement, we think we're getting more done by putting in more time. We're actually getting less done, and we're making more mistakes. And our health and our relationships are going to start to suffer, both at work and at home. And our health is going to suffer as well. So momentary disengagement, longer periods when you're not at work, and then even longer periods when you take vacation or full days off. I'm giving you some quick tips here, and you can share some ways that you do this or might do it. I'd love for you to share what you do, but I'd also like you to share at the end some new things that you're going to try doing, not just sharing what you are already doing, because we can kind of fall into a rut a little bit with things we're doing and get complacent. It's always good to shake things up a little bit and try something new. Nature has many healing and curative properties. In fact, Florence Nightingale herself said nature alone heals. That's why we have healing gardens at so many healthcare facilities today, and outdoor labyrinths and meditation gardens and so many other similar things, and so much more plants and foliage in the healthcare environment, because nature is a part of taking care of ourselves. Participating in outside activities, having hobbies, taking lessons. Paint and sip got very popular for a while, then the pandemic hit, and people were still painting and sipping a little bit on Zoom. And what the heck, you could just sip, you could just paint, whatever. But having some outside interests and activities, all work and no play, makes any nurse get sick and burnt out, and it's just not a good place to be. And then always remember to value your work, the things that you do. talk very often, I want to remind nurses, again, I want to remind you of your greatness, of the value that you bring to healthcare. It's so easy to lose sight of that. Imagine a world without nurses. It's not even imaginable. So whether we always get the recognition or the spotlight or the praise, it doesn't really matter, but our work has value and it has meaning. And it's important to even reflect on that on a regular basis. All right. So moving through, staying engaged at work. Now, again, I'm presenting to you a large part of the nursing leadership team today, but this applies to you, but it also applies to the team that you work with. And I already talked about getting newly hired nurses engaged, but this involves all of us. Now, because this is a research conference, I'm very possibly preaching to the choir here, as they say today. But again, we also want to get back to basics. And I want to just remind you of some of the things that are so fundamentally important. Nurses working on interprofessional or interdisciplinary committees is so valuable for so many reasons. Not just because we're more engaged, but we develop relationships with individuals in other departments. Is that valuable? Because we work with an interprofessional team all the time. So creating relationships through committee work is important. But it also can help us to hone our leadership skills, develop our voice, get more accustomed to speaking up, speaking out, articulating our value. Plus, a lot of problems are solved at the committee level. And by the way, if you happen to have a recruitment or a retention committee or task force, I hope you have some newly licensed nurses on that committee. I'm amazed at how often I will, and again, I'm sure this is not the case at Carilion, but I'm always asking nursing leaders, do you have any new nurses on that recruitment and retention committee if that's who you're trying to recruit? 9 times out of 10, if not 9.9 times, the answer is no. So there's lots of ways to get everybody involved. You know, very often we as leaders, we mistakenly think that we have to solve all the problems, that we're supposed to come up with all the ideas. That's a really old, outdated, irrelevant model of leadership. Leadership is very much participatory today. So we want to get more input, more ideas, more engagement, not just as a recruitment or retention tool, but that is the best way for us all to do our absolute best and for us to continue to promote all of our nursing colleagues and help them advance in their profession and their professional life. Nursing is so many things, and all of you on this conference are doing a variety of things, but every nurse isn't there. Every nurse doesn't know the opportunities, or they don't really know how to get into those opportunities. And, you know, again, I always encourage nurses to aspire to leadership roles. And sometimes nurses say to me, oh, Donna, why should I take on more responsibility when I'm not going to get paid much more or anything more at all? And I say, you know what? I don't recommend you do it for your employer. I recommend that you do it for yourself, because when you get out of your comfort zone, which is very important, you don't want to stay in your comfort zone. And I'll tell you why. The comfort zone is a danger zone. When you're in it, you're not learning. And if you're not learning, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're stagnating. Have you ever seen a stagnant pool of water? What it looks like, what it smells like? Yeah, you don't want to be there. So working up to leadership roles is getting you out of your comfort zone, but it's helping you to stretch yourself and to grow. Remember Maslow, that pyramid guy that we all learned about in nursing school, presumably? Yeah, and so what was at the top of that pyramid? And you might be saying, why are you asking questions, Donna? This is a virtual program, you can't hear me. Well, I have developed telepathic skills in the virtual world over the last year and a half that I actually can hear people laughing and talking and responding while I'm presenting virtually. So Maslow, the pyramid guy. So what was at the top of that pyramid? I hear you. And who doesn't remember? Self-actualization. And self-actualization, just to refresh your memory, is developing ourselves fully, working to our full potential. And Maslow and others before him, he didn't coin that phrase, but we learned about self-actualization through Maslow in our education. Maslow and others before him said that as humans, we have an innate human drive to develop ourselves fully throughout our entire life until we take our last breath. And when we stop developing ourselves, when we stop growing and expanding, our life force begins to dim. Our energy begins to wane. We start to pull back, even in subtle ways in the beginning. So that is not a good thing. This is not all about we have to achieve, but we do want to look for opportunities to grow and to learn going forward. And I mentioned here taking time to socialize. Socialization is so important when we work in a fast-paced, high-stress, high-acuity environment, as we all do, and then add all the stressors of outdoor life. But even without all of that, taking time to socialize, and you can socialize on Zoom, you can socialize on the phone, you can certainly socialize in person today. Socializing with people that you work with is an opportunity to let off steam, to relax, to laugh, to cry, even to laugh about things that aren't funny when they happen, but we find ways to find humor in them afterwards. And what has happened in the healthcare workforce with 12-hour shifts for those of you that work 12s, 13, 14s, is we don't get to see each other or spend as much social time with each other. Nobody's going to go out for pizza after a 12-hour shift, and nurses don't always gather as much. So make sure that you are creating some social events or attending social events or having Zoom social events where you're not at work, you're not doing work, and you just have some opportunity to get together and to support one another. I talked about self-care and self-nurturing. We also have to nurture each other right now, more than ever. We have to ramp that up. We have to really support and nourish one another. We have to take extra care, not only to care for ourselves, but to care for our coworkers, for our colleagues, for our teams, for our new nurses, our seasoned nurses, our leaders, everybody. We have to look for ways to continue to support one another and keep that team bond strong. The higher the level of stress, the more these bonds tend to break down. So we have to work to keep it together, and we have to put more effort and energy into it during really very stressful times. All right, so let's move on. And I want to talk about enhancing your professional package a little bit. And again, these are some reminders for you, but these are messages to bring back to the people that you work with and for you to role model and mentor also. Just told you about Maslow, reminded you about Maslow and the issue of self-actualization. So certification is something valuable for all nurses to go after. Why? Some nurses will say, I don't get paid more. I don't get paid much more for certification. That part doesn't matter to me. Everything I'm talking about here is not related to your employer specifically. It's all related to you. Certification is a way for you to raise the bar, get out of your comfort zone, learn more, get more experience. And then once you get that certification, you've raised the bar on your level of practice, and you have to maintain that certification. But then you become a role model. You become a mentor. You cannot lead anyone further than you have already gone yourself. So that's something to consider. Every nurse should work on their professional writing and speaking skills. Why? Because good communication empowers us. It helps us to better express ourselves. It helps us to share more of what we know and what we do. Remember, I think I mentioned earlier, we do all this amazing research, but we often don't share it, or we share it only in a nursing journal that maybe a limited number of people happen to read. So we empower ourselves by developing our writing and speaking skills. And it's the good communicators that get ahead in this world. Now, I was absolutely thrilled to hear that at Carilion, and this is not the case everywhere, you have a newsletter, and I know I wrote it down somewhere, called Within Reach. I love that title. And Deirdre is your fairly recent editor, and there are opportunities for all of you to write, whether you're a novice or seasoned writer. That is a great gift to you, because that does not exist in many healthcare organizations. So to have not only a vehicle for you to get published your first time or on an ongoing basis, but to have individuals there that are willing to work with you, teach you, coach you, and so on is perfect. That's beautiful. Same thing with speaking. I know you had opportunities to speak perhaps at this conference, but all the other conferences you have. Often encourage nurses to start with a poster presentation if they're not quite ready to, full out do some sort of a presentation. Poster presentations are phenomenal. You're incorporating research with some presentation because you're going to be presenting the poster. And if, you're nervous about it the first time, perfect. One big lesson I have learned in life is that whenever you're stretching yourself, whenever you're out of your comfort zone, fear is always part of the equation. So if there's something you want to do and you say, oh, Donna, I'd love to do that, but I'm really feeling nervous. I say, oh, good, perfect. That means that you're on the right track. They say, yeah, but Donna, you don't understand. I'm like petrified. I say, oh, excellent. That's even more validation that you're moving in the right direction. Fear is always part of the equation when you're stretching yourself, when you're growing, when you get out of your comfort zone. And the bigger the goal, the bigger the fear. But the fear will start to dissipate once you master that skill or you do something for the first time until the next challenge. So I learned long ago to make fear my friend rather than, trying to keep it out. And I'm like, okay, I'm talking to fear here. Okay, you pain in the butt, in the gluteus. If you are going to always be there when I'm stretching myself, just stand alongside of me, not in front of me. Don't block me. Walk with me if you must. And we'll go from there. So I've learned to make friends with fear. That's something that you can work on if you're not quite there yet. Higher education, certain skills that you might want to develop, always learning and growing. It keeps us not only engaged in work, it keeps us engaged in life. And we know today that staying engaged in life is one of the healthiest things we can do for body, mind, and spirit. The old model of retiring and then just fading into the sunset and sitting on a rocking chair on the porch, not only is that not relevant for people today, but it's not healthy either. It's not healthy at all. I know many nurses, I don't know if you ever experienced this at Carilion, but when the electronic medical record was starting to be introduced across the country, many nurses left nursing, took early retirement, whatever, because they were too intimidated to learn how to use the electronic medical record. That is one coping mechanism that many of us use. We run away from opportunities. We run away from challenge. We run away from opportunities to learn something new. But every opportunity that presents itself is an opportunity for us to learn and to grow. There's a wonderful book. I'm a collector of nursing memorabilia and even old nursing textbooks. So interesting, the things that have changed and the things that haven't changed. But there's a wonderful book I found. It was written in the 1950s. It's called The Lamp is Heavy. And it's written by a woman. I think her name is, all right, I don't want to fracture her name right now. But the book is The Lamp is Heavy. She writes all about her experience as a student nurse. And it's a serious book, but lots of humor and good advice in there. And one thing she says in that book that is so valuable, and I'm paraphrasing, but she says that every time we reject an opportunity that comes our way, we give a little piece of ourself away. Like, I'm getting goosebumps every time I say that. I'm like, wow. Because I think of opportunities that came my way that maybe I was too scared to get into. In fact, speaking of speaking, I had a job a number of years ago. I was hired by a hospital because I had some background in healthcare reimbursement when the DRG system and everything was changing. Hired as a nurse to head a new department in a hospital. And after I was there for 3 months, my new boss said to me, I want you to speak to the physicians at their monthly meeting next week about DRGs and reimbursement issues. And I said, oh, no. I said, no, I can't do that. I said, first of all, I'm not comfortable speaking in front of audiences. I really said that. And that's how I felt. I said, I'm too new. They don't know me. I don't know them. Long story short, and I love to tell that whole story. I don't have time to tell you the whole story today, but here's what I want to convey. My new boss of 3 months said to me, I'm telling him, no, absolutely not, off the table, out of the question, not going to do it, won't happen. He sat there very calmly, and I was flailing my arms, I was spewing saliva, the pitch of my voice went up. When I was finished, he said to me in a very even tone, you will speak to the physicians next week at their monthly meeting. So he wasn't asking me, he was telling me. And I thought, well, I could quit my new job or I could speak to the physicians. And I really liked the job, so I decided to do it. And again, I don't have time to tell you that whole story, But really, that was, even though I was a wreck that night, I thought I was a disaster in presenting, but slowly and gradually that led me, I was required to do a lot more speaking. If he told me when he hired me that I was going to have to do public speaking, I would not have taken the job. But he forced me in a good way to speak. And as it turns out, I wound up many years later speaking for a living, which is so ironic. But imagine if I had rejected that opportunity and I said, no, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to quit my job because I don't want to do it. So sometimes we have to believe in someone else's belief in us before our own belief kicks in. I think Les Brown, one of my favorite inspirational speakers, said that. Sometimes we have to believe in someone else's belief in us before our own belief kicks in, or we have to let someone push us, sometimes kick us in the gluteus also, okay? You know, sometimes we get little opportunities that whisper, then maybe a tap on the shoulder, but if we don't respond, sometimes we get a good swift kick. So if you have somebody that's been saying to you, you know, you should do more speaking, you should do more writing, should apply for that leadership role, I want you to spend some time thinking about that and pay it some heed. Okay. So a few words about our professional associations. It is through our professional associations that we create community in nursing. And without community, we may survive, but you may survive, but you will never thrive. And thriving and getting past surviving is always vital in nursing, but it's more vital today than ever. So we might say, I can't join and get active, Donna. I have less time than ever. Actually, this is a time when all the more reason for you to get involved in your professional associations, to join, go to meetings virtually or in person, conferences, networking, whatever is going on. And there's so much value. There's an article on my website. I have a few articles at the end to recommend to you, but there's an article called Getting the Most from Your Professional Associations. That's on my website. I'll have that contact information at the end. And feel free to print that, share that with your team members, but it's not enough to join, but to get active. Also, you know, momentarily getting back to newly licensed nurses, they often say to me, oh, no, I didn't join yet. I feel I have to get more experience. I say, no, you should join your nursing associations immediately, and that is going to help to increase or decrease your learning curve. It's going to help to increase your journey toward professional nursing and building support and everything else that you need to build as a professional nurse. And honestly, for nurses who are not involved in their professional associations, you know, they're engaged only to a minimal level, because we are all part of a global community of nursing, not just national, global community of nursing. And with internet and everything today and phone apps, we can connect with nurses all over the world. I have become so much more aware of things going on globally. And, you know, it doesn't matter if a nurse is in Africa or in England or in Canada or in Tennessee, USA, we are all working to do the same thing. We have different healthcare systems, we have different resources, but we are all part of that same global community. And I encourage you not only to get more engaged in that, but to promote that more with your colleagues. When individuals, you know, in nursing, we've been historically very isolated in our specialty, isolated in our unit where we work, isolated in the place where we work. And by the way, I have my phone on silent, so if any of the powers that be need to tell me anything's going on with the transmission, just use your voice and I should be able to hear you. Okay, I'm not watching the text messages right now.
Your transmission is fine. I was giving you a 5-minute warning.
Okay. Well, can I go a little over 5 since we lost 10? If not, I'll just go through the rest quick.
Yeah,
No, I think she can.
Let's go to 105 if we can do that. So it's about
That's perfectly fine. That's a good compromise. That's perfectly fine. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm not going to gyp you on anything. I'm going to give you the most important part of what's left here. Okay, so our professional associations and just, you know, again, role models, mentors, inviting people to come to meetings with you, promoting the importance and how to get the most out of their associations. I'm going to just say a few words on setting professional goals. First of all, it would be ideal if leaders, mentors, preceptors work with the people that they lead or that they mentor or that they coach by setting professional goals to find out what their professional goals are and to set them. But we all need to have short and long-term professional goals. The immortal J.C. Penney said that, he said, give me a stock clerk with a goal, and I'll give you a man who will change history. Give me a man without a goal, and I'll give you a stock clerk. So in other words, that one statement is a testament to the value of goals. Again, it's not about achieve, but it's about working towards self-actualization, always working towards something new to develop yourself. Maybe it's just working on your communication skills or whatever that might be. And, be a catalyst for positive change. I'm going to go quickly through the next couple of slides. Yeah, and then we'll be almost done. Again, supporting one another, being positive. As humans, we are naturally drawn to the negative. If you didn't know that, we have something called the negativity bias. And when we hear negative thoughts, we say negative things, we read negative things, we get more electrical activity in our brain. It's important to look for ways to be positive and to inject positivity into our day. So aside from some of these things that might seem very basic or rudimentary, and again, I mentioned we have to really take care of one another. So being extra kind, being extra supportive, going out of your way to greet all new employees, not just newly licensed nurses. I talked about gratitude earlier. I always say, go into work tomorrow, or whether it's online or in person, and thank your coworkers for coming to work, for showing up and for being there on time. And nurses will say to me, why should I thank them? That's what they get paid for. They wouldn't get paid. I said, yeah, but imagine if they didn't show up, if they called in sick or something else happened. So thank them for coming in. And then it kind of becomes just a fun thing or whatever. And let's see, I'm not going to go through using pro-nursing language today. Some of these slides will be available to you afterwards. Yeah, benefits, that's okay. Oh yeah, I already passed positive nursing language. So these are, just to sum up before I ask you to do some sharing, these are some articles that relate to the topics I spoke about. If you go to my website, donnacardillo.com, you click on the nurses tab, there are over 100 articles there. They're categorized. There's even a free webinar called Transform Your Practice Through the Power of Words. And that will address the part of this program that I just skipped over about using pro-nursing language. Words do have power, and how we speak about ourselves and our practice does matter. It influences us. It influences the people we work with, including patients, and it influences those around us. A couple of quick things, and I'll come back to this for a moment. These are a couple of books I recommend. At the bottom is The Power of Full Engagement that I mentioned. I highly recommend that book, and then a couple of books of mine that are relevant. And because we are in a virtual environment today and we do not have time to interact face-to-face, to talk, to chat, ask questions, I'm extending myself to you. There's no time limit on this. Feel free to call me, to email me, to follow me on social media, message me there if you want to make a comment, if you have a question, even if you'd like to discuss something with you. I sincerely welcome that communication from you, and I'm more than happy to do that. So let's just take the few minutes that we have left, and Kim or Beth, is there anything in the chat room that you could share right now, or are people, do they have the ability to unmute themselves if they wish to speak?
Yes, they can unmute themselves.
So
Okay.
I posted the author's name for A Lamp is Heavy, and that's in the chat, and that's the only thing so far that we have in the chat. So if anybody might like to post a takeaway or what you might do differently,
Or speak it out loud even, that would be, if they can unmute themselves, just speak up. And I will tell you this, the first person to speak is the bravest person on the conference call today. And I have a suspicion that I already know who that is, but let's see if I'm right. Who's going to be the first person to speak? Don't forget to unmute yourself. Ah, the bravest person is incognito today. How about you, Beth? Anything from you or Kim?
Well, I think I've been wanting to try yoga, and I'm thinking now I might try it. I've been putting it off, but it's sounding more interesting every time I hear about it.
So Beth, let me tell you this too. Yoga isn't all on a mat on the floor, you know, throwing your leg over the other leg. There's chair yoga. There's laughter yoga. There's dance yoga. There's
That's interesting.
all different types of yoga. Yoga is very popular. So look up yoga studios and yoga practices in your area and try something. I love chair yoga. You're sitting in a chair and you still get a wonderful, wonderful workout. I mean, I like some mat classes, as we call it, when you're on the floor, but there's lots of different types of yoga. So good for you.
The chair yoga seems to be one I'm going to look at.
Good. Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. I love it. Kim, how about you?
Yoga is on my to-do list. I've done yoga for a long time, but I kind of let it slip. So that's definitely on my to-do list. And I'm kind of in a career transition, so I've got lots of things lined up to.
Okay.
It looks like Deirdre unmuted, so let's see what she's thinking.
Beautiful.
Well, you know, I think this past year or so, I have to admit it's been a rough year for all of us with COVID and being isolated. And on top of that, I made the insane decision to also renovate my kitchen, which took about 8 months and was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, at this point, I'm so excited now to get a break from work and come home. And I'm thinking about all the stuff that I'm going to cook at Thanksgiving, even though none of my kids are coming home, but I'm cooking anyway. And I am decorating for the holidays because I can. And it gives me joy. It really gives me a lot of joy and makes me feel more energized coming back to work.
That's beautiful, Deirdre. And that's a perfect form of disengagement also, having something completely different to focus on. I often share with people, which I'll share with all of you, my class from nursing school, we, for a big anniversary a number of years ago, we used to have dinners, lunches. We rented a beach house. I'm in New Jersey, in the beautiful Jersey Shore. We rented a beach house and we decided to spend a weekend together. And we had such an uproariously fun, amazing time, and we just laughed from start to finish. We had so much fun and so much joy from it that we decided to do it every year, and we do it every year now. And not only is that beautiful disengagement and everything else, but it's there was something else I was going to say about that. But anyway, there's just so much value to it, and you know, the opportunity to socialize and everything else there. So thanks for sharing that. It's also an anchor. That was the word I was going to use for holidays and doing something on a regular basis annually. It becomes an emotional anchor for us, something that we can look forward to, so that even in the midst of chaos and trauma and trials and tribulation, we have something like that. It's a bright spot. Making plans, looking forward is a great way to go. Is there anybody else? Otherwise, I'll wrap up. Okay, so just a couple of reminders then, because we are out of time right now. Remember to, Florence Nightingale was such an amazing role model for us so many years ago. Year before last was allegedly the year of the nurse. We certainly barely got to celebrate. It was extended by some to this year. We barely got to celebrate. So I'm declaring every year from here on in the year of the nurse, every year to celebrate yourself, nursing, the things that we do, the value that we bring to healthcare and the world every single day. I'm not even going to summarize all these points. You'll have an opportunity to review the program again. And just remember to take care of yourself, but then to take care of everyone else around you in all the different ways we talked about today. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care. Nurse Power.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Okay, all. I will